Well, hello everybody. This is Tim Green with Rattle Magazine. Welcome to the Rattlecast, we're the biggest freewheeling live streaming poetry podcast on the planet, in your ear and on your laptops. For episode number 293, our guest today is going to be Susan Cohen. She'll be here in just a few minutes. Before we get into it, I should say that Rattle is a publication of the Rattle Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit working to promote the practice of poetry. We've been in continuous publication since 1995 and are unaffiliated with any other organization. We just do all this because we love poetry. I know you do too, so please do click on the like button and share, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications. Anything you can do, any format that we're sending this. We're live streaming on X, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. Anywhere you can share that helps. On YouTube, I should have said. And if you hit like and you subscribe, the more you click, the more we get poetry spread all over the place. And that's always our goal here. And all we ask is that you help us out with that. Now we're going to start out like we usually do with our Poets Respond poet. Ain Khan is here with a really powerful short poem, Sacrifices. And hi, Ain, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, I'm so glad to have you. It's one of those poems where, I was reading through, and you do, as you're reading through Poets Respond submissions, or really any poems, or waiting for some kind of like pulse of real like feeling, And then when I got to the end, the last couplet of your poem, it really, really hit me. So tell us about how the poem came to be. Everybody knows about what's going on, I think, between Pakistan and India right now, and roughly maybe the history, but let us know that the background and how this poem came to be.
Sure. So just as somebody I live in Canada. My ethnic background, I'm Pakistani, and there's, just in the social circles, there's been a lot of conversation with what's happening with Pakistan and India. It's been in the news a lot, and both sets of my grandparents lived on the Indian side of the border before there was India and Pakistan in 1947. And they had to migrate to the Pakistani side, and in the process of it, there was an incredible amount of loss of life, loss of homes and livelihood, and people went missing, and I think that close to 100,000 rapes, from what I've researched, were documented from that time. And it was just sacrifices on all levels, and the idea was that it was going to result in peace for both of these religious groups. And some 70 odd years later, we're still fighting. And, it just, when you take a step back, you just wonder what were those sacrifices for. And this story is actually a true story about my paternal grandmother. And this was related to my mother. And I was thinking about the losses that both sets of grandparents had gone through. And the specific story, the fact that people might question if it's fictitious because it's so unbelievable, it's a testament to what they lived through and the horrors and trauma of it all. It was kind of birthed. It fell into my head. It was not a long process to write it. That's about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, how did you come across the entry point? I think so often we feel really strongly about anything that's going on, especially when it has personal significance like this. But then turning it into poetry is always really difficult. So how did you find, just that first line and the way you were entering? A lot of times it comes just inside our heads. We don't even know how. Is that the case here?
Yeah.
Or yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those that kind of fell into my head pretty cooked already. So I don't know, but it was not a logical process to say, oh, I'm going to enter at this point and then it's going to end at this. I just sat down, wrote it in one shot, and that's how it came to me. And I knew I wanted it to be. It actually was birthed because of the fact that I was working with another poet, and he had given me the prompt to write about a flag and what it represents to me. And I'd been walking on for a few days. I couldn't think of anything. I emailed him back saying I got nothing. And then this poem came to me, and it doesn't refer to a flag. It doesn't, but that's what I was thinking about, was the India and Pakistan conflict. And I had, just because there's these stories that I've grown up with, there's so many of them, and they're just one of like millions, right? Every person my age has a grandparent that has a story like this. It was very organic. I didn't have a process behind it.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and hear it. Why don't you read Sacrifices for us?
Sure. Thank you so much. Sacrifices. He was still, wet, her Hindu amniotic fluid on his new Pakistani body. 2 days or 2 kilometers that way, he would have been Indian. But the border had been drawn by white hands, and swords had been drawn by brown ones. Either way, he was, and now wasn't. She called him Yusuf, the name my Muslim grandfather would have given him, pulled out his tiny body from between her legs, stumbled into the darkness, far away from the camps, dug a hole with bare hands, and placed him in his cradle. The next night, wolves looted the earth.
Yeah, so powerful poem, and so hard to imagine what that must be like to go through, and the poem really captures some of that. Thanks so much for sharing that, Anne, and for being our poet of the day today.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'd love being here.
Yeah, thank you. And once again, that was Ain Khan with Sacrifices, today's poem of the day on Rattle.com. If you'd like to share a poem about current events yourself, all you got to do is go to Rattle.com /page/respond up there, or just find it in the menu bar, and then submit a poem by Friday night. And we publish the most interesting, compelling, memorable poem we get every week on Sunday. And this week it was Ain Khan's Sacrifices, but it could be yours next week. So make sure you write and participate in the world that you live in by making poetry a part of it, and submit those poems. Now we're going to take a quick break and go to our main guest, Susan Cohen. So sit tight, and we'll be right back with more poetry. And we're back. Thanks for your patience. Like I said, today's guest is Susan Cohen. Susan's most recent book is Democracy of Fire, which I have right here. She's the author of 2 chapbooks and 2 previous full-length collections of poems, as well as co-author of a nonfiction book. She was a newspaper reporter, contributing writer to the Washington Post magazine, and faculty member of the University of California Graduate School of Journalism before studying bioethics and poetry at Stanford University, while on a John S. Knight Fellowship for mid-career journalists. So that's really interesting, too. Her numerous journalism honors include a grant from the Fund for Investigative Reporting and 2 Science and Society Awards for the National Association of Science Writers. In 2013, she's turned her full writing attention to poetry and earned an MFA from my favorite, the Pacific University program. That's where Katie's going to, because I think it is the best program there is. And so she's a graduate of that too. And she lives in Berkeley, California. And here she is, Susan Cohen. Hey, Susan, so glad you could be here today.
Great to be here, Tim. Thank you for inviting me. And yeah, I see we're color coordinated, it looks like.
We are. Yeah, glad we got the memo. Yeah, well, it's a pleasure to have you on. And I'm always really interested in the relationship between news and poetry. So I think we're going to talk about that a lot, because it's something, there's this sort of strained relationship I kind of have with it. So it's interesting to talk about in all the ways that it can be, both fruitful and difficult. But let's start out with a poem first. Do you want to read one from the book?
Sure. The one I'm going to begin with has got nothing to do with news, unlike a lot of the poems in the book. But, the book, in a very general way, moves from the more personal world to the broader world and ultimately the planet. So this is from the first section. It's called I Imagine Myself Grateful. And in the end, dirt swaddled. The stringy roots of dandelions, lady smock, lesser celandine, getting to know me. No rowboat, no ferryman, no sickening chop to cross. Afterbirth is membrane. What can afterlife be made of? My family will gather. The bowl I emptied sits ready to hold tangerines or car keys. If it's autumn, wind rouses semaphores of color to compensate for the brisk season of dying. I imagine myself grateful. The way a storm inspires thanks when the roof is finally patched, utility bills paid up, the furnace lit. At last, I'll go back into the dark, content never to be cold again, and take everything with me that was ever really mine.
Yeah, so that was I Imagine Myself Grateful, one of the earlier poems in Democracy of Fire by Susan Cohen. And Susan, so what can you tell us about your background in journalism? Why is it you mentioned in an article you sent me that you started writing poetry pretty early on, but then you chose journalism as your path. So what was the lead into journalism, and why did you go into that direction?
Basically, because I got rejected from the poetry workshop I applied to as an 18-year-old sophomore at Cal, and I thought that meant I had no talent, and I didn't write another poem for close to 30 years. But in the meantime, I was walking across campus one day and ran into the professor who led my political science honors seminar, and he asked me what I was going to do after graduation, and I said, I was thinking of law school. He said, "Oh, don't do that. Everybody's going to be a lawyer." And I said, "Well, I was thinking of public administration." And he said, "Oh, I think you'll be bored." And then he said, "If I could write like you, uh, I'd be a journalist." And it was like a bulb went off. So,
Yeah, and so what was your career like? I mean, that's something that we don't get to see very often is a talk to somebody who spent so much time in journalism. So you went to school for that, and then what was your progression in that career?
so at the time I graduated, it was very hard as a female, believe it or not, to get hired. I started out on a group of weekly papers, which turned out to be good in some ways because I got to cover, I was 23 or 4, and I was covering politics and campaigns and county government and writing long news features and I did eventually move from that to a daily newspaper, the San Jose Mercury News, where I worked for a number of years, and from that to their magazine and magazine writing. And somewhere in there, I think it was after my second child was born, I didn't want to be living so far away from work, and I took a teaching job at Cal, where I'd gone to journalism school. And then after that, I freelanced for a while, and then I got the night fellowship you mentioned from my bio. It was supposed to be mid-career. I was a little beyond mid-career, but the thing about the night fellowship at that point was that you wrote this grand proposal, which I did, all about bioethics, and then you got there and they told you could do anything you wanted. So people took flute, they took fencing. I took poetry, which was kind of my secret ambition. So I had discovered Kim Adnesio's workshops in the Bay Area before that, and I'd started to write poetry again, as I said, for the first time in almost 30 years. So I was incredibly fortunate to be able to take seminars with Chris Wyman and Simone DiPiero, and sit in on survey courses with Yvonne Bolan, and
Oh
it
yeah,
kind
that's really.
it kind of launched me. I mean, it solidified that that's who I was, and that's what I was going to do.
Yeah. In your time, as a journalist, is there a certain story that stuck out as most memorable to you over the years, or was most impactful to you personally?
Interesting question. I was kind of one of the last generalists, uh, but I did find myself when I was working for the magazine writing a couple of stories that had to do with the ethics of medicine. And I should say, when I finished the Knight Fellowship, I did do some more journalism. I co-wrote this book with another medical writer about treating normal kids for growth. This is way off the poetry topic.
No, I'm curious. I love going. If it's poetry and nothing but poetry every week, it gets a little boring. So let's.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, it was about. I wrote it with Christina Cosgrove, who's a friend of mine and a journalist, and she had been treated with massive doses of DES, which is a synthetic estrogen, to keep her from getting too tall.
Oh, wow.
And the story I had written for the magazine was about human growth hormone, synthetic human growth hormone, which was basically what launched the whole biotech industry when Genentech came up with it, and to treat kids who were too short. So anyway, that's how all that happened. I can't even remember what the question was when we started with it.
Well, I was wondering what the most memorable story that you covered was, and so that
Yeah,
definitely explains. And it explains why you went into bioethics too. Mm-hmm.
I love being a journalist because and on this I can tie into poetry. When I did teach, I used to tell my students, you don't have to be a great writer to be a journalist. If you're a good writer, it's a bonus. You have to be a clear writer, but mainly you have to have incredible curiosity. You just have to be on fire to figure out how things work, things that you know nothing about, and how the world works, and whether it's political decisions or scientific breakthroughs or whatever. And so I loved journalism for that reason, because I didn't have to become an expert on anything. I could just ask a lot of questions, which I could also tie into poetry, because I think poems ask questions rather than answer them often.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, poetry, having curiosity is so much the central part of anything. It's like a wondering and a questioning of the world that draws us into any good poem. Because if we already knew the answer, it ends up being a kind of rhetoric that we're just spewing out, and it doesn't really go anywhere interesting. Let's hear the next poem you wanted to read, which is one of these science news poems, a prose poem based on a science story, which is interesting to see.
Yes, so I was a science reporter for a while. I have no science background, but I don't know. I was in an area with a lot of scientific institutions. And after I left, I still kept getting a publication called Science News. And the thing about science news stories is they often have very clever titles. And so I did this series of poems that are scattered through the book, all called Science News, followed by a headline. And these are prose, very short prose poems. Science News. Gene tweak can extend life 500%, but you have to be a worm. If you can learn to love the fist of darkness, let it close around you. No human touch, dancing in the rain, light at the end of the tunnel. A simplicity of soil, a foamy loam. Strip down to the basic muscle of survival and let earth with all it brings pass through you. Life extends its linear line. Now, how long is long enough?
Yeah, and speaking of questionings, ending of the question there, that was a Science News. Gene tweak can extend life 500%, but you have to be a worm. There's a great title from the headline. That is from Democracy of Fire by Susan Cohen. So with all that time learning, how to be a reporter and how to have that curiosity and clarity too, which is so important that you mentioned. What do you think when you transition back into poetry? Which of the tools of journalism helped you most, would you say, as a poet?
This is something I used to think a lot about. It's been a while, but one thing that comes to mind is I'm still a deadline writer. So, I mean, I learned you don't just sit with your hands on the keyboard and wait for the muse to strike. You find ways to make a poem happen. I think every poet finds his or her own way to make poems come. So that's one. Revision, I love revision, which is, when I used to write for magazine articles, I'd go through 15, 20 drafts. And, um, those are two, the kind of precision of language, choosing just the right word or the most telling detail, not just detail for the sake of detail. Um, yeah, so I think some good writing habits that are true for any kind of writing. There are different writing muscles, I think,
Mm-hmm.
journalism and poetry. I had to learn to not. I had to. I'm a very analytical person, and I had to learn ways to turn off that part of my brain a little bit.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, that's interesting. Say more about that, about the different muscles. Like it's a non-analytical muscle. Like how do you describe those two?
um, Yeah, I think when I was at Pacific, I studied with Marvin Bell. And Marvin was great, and the thing that he used to scrawl across everything and shout in my ear, and it's still in my head, is wild writing, wild writing, wild writing. Um, so. And he would tell me, well, if you want to keep writing elevated prose, there's nothing wrong with that, which was like a huge challenge. So,
Mm-hmm.
one way is to follow my ear, and another way I think is you mentioned surprise myself. I mean, not sit down to a poem that's based on an idea that I already have, that's with a conclusion I have already reached.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, let's hear another poem of yours, Susan. Do you want to read the drill next?
Okay. Yeah, I don't know how much this has um, uh, absorbed the lessons I just told you that I learned, because this is a poem that's in a way from the news, although it's also related to my daughter, who's a teacher. And this introduces the second part of the book, which is moving into the broader world. It's called The Drill. I love having a daughter who is grown. We laugh the same staccato laugh. She's walking with me in winter past plum trees whose early blooms survived a recent shock of hail. The morning not as warm as it looks. She tugs up her collar. The only person I know whose eardrums ache just like mine in wind. Now she's saying she's been told, don't unlock your classroom door, even if a child bangs terrified and begs you to let her in. She teaches her fifth graders to run, hide, defend, the country's common lesson plan, the latest in education for mortality. She's supposed to run with them, not hang back to shepherd slow ones, not hover over any child body to call out a name without a future. If they're locked down, she's been told to grab the red extinguisher, ready to squelch the fire in his eyes. Then the boys can tackle him. Her children practice their assignments, lower blinds, stack chairs and desks and tables to build a barricade. We have calm voices, but the same angry country in our veins. Now she stops to examine a fig tree in leaf, wondering out loud why it bears buds, since the one next to it stands bare as bone. It seems random how only some will get the chance to open.
Yeah. So it's a beautiful poem, framed as it is on that walk and the leaves and the trees there. One of the things I wanted to talk about was because I always give this advice, on the critique of the week and other places where I'm giving workshops, is that those journalistic questions that you want to get out front, you want to have the lead, you don't want to bury the lead, and you want to know the who, what, why, where, when, as early as possible so that people don't get lost and distracted. And that's such a valuable thing in a poem, I think. When you talk about clarity, it seems to me that clarity, that's kind of what clarity is not allowing your reader to be lost by introducing those really important primary details. And I wonder if you feel the same way about that it's important to have that sense of place and location put down within the poem, like you do here in this one, where you set it up on that walk with your daughter. We know exactly who's talking and what's going on because you set up the situation right away.
That's interesting. Yes and no. I mean, clarity is another issue I really had to deal with. I got praised a lot for the clarity of my poems, and yet I found myself wanting to be less clear in the same sense as being less analytical. Maybe it's being more lyrical. But I agree with you that the poems I like best are grounded in some way. So if you look at a poem like by Thomas Tranströmer or somebody like that, who can be, very mysterious, and yet there's almost always a grounding somewhere in there. He's on a train, or it's springtime, or there's just something that ties it to the real world and lets you sort of get your footing. So I do agree with that. I think poetic clarity may be a little different than journalistic clarity because, the best poems mean more than one thing. And, and that's something you can't really do in journalism.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Well, speak more about it. So what is, clarity when you're trying to also, mean more than one thing at once? Like how do you define clarity? I guess in both fields, what's the difference?
Hmm. Uh, I think, what in poetry, there's a way of using imagery. You use imagery in magazine writing too, of course. But there's a way of using imagery that lets people get a feeling rather than a thought in poetry. I think it has something to do, and I'd have to, probably books have been written about this, but I think it has something to do with poetry's connection, origin, and music. Maybe the way a piece of music with no words, you can literally physically feel it in your chest if it's really moving you somehow. And that's something I think a poem can do that prose doesn't do in the same way. And I do think it's it's something that's not expressible exactly and I'm not being very clear now, but uh, the Russian poet, Osip Mandelstam, said, he couldn't really necessarily define poetry, but he knew when it had mussed up the sheets and spent the night. Uh, it's not, yeah. That's the best I can do. He said
Yeah.
it better than I could.
Yeah, well, that's great. I just love hearing people because we all sort of talk about the same things. Sort of talking around the same topic, which it's hard to articulate, and so it's always fun to hear, how different poets articulate that. Let's read the next poem up. It's "Report on the State of the World's Children."
Okay, and this is one. So this was based on a UN report that came out a few years ago, and I would say this ties into Marvin and wild writing because I brought this to a seminar Marvin was leading, and I very much had this in mind. So uh, report on the state of the world's children. They took me to sea in a faulty raft. I couldn't swim, but dead I could float. I came from the wrong tribe. They took me at night over mountains and let go of my hand. I was born at the wrong time. They took me to a place of tents and snow. The heat was fire, and they rationed the flames. Winter entered to sleep with us, also men, harsher than winter. I was brave, only my dreams cried out. I came from the wrong village. They took me to a camp with tall fences, cholera could vault. I crossed from a wrong country. Alone, I wandered a desert. I slept under a cactus for weeks until crows found me. They took me to jail. I watched a green fly who was allowed to come and go. They pronounced my wrong name. I prayed the wrong way. They took my house and gave me rubble, then told me to go home. I sat day after day and made walls from all that I had. My two arms became mother and father, holding each other and hugging my knees.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, powerful poem. Once again, that was Report on the State of the World's Children by Susan Cohen from her book Democracy of Fire. And you know that Marvin Bell, that style, be wild, take leaps, and you have that, it's multiple narratives sort of mixed in there in that poem, and leaping between different stories and making a whole collage of them where the juxtaposition is what sort of creates the tension and the power as you move through the storytelling, I'd say. And so how does a poem come to be in that way? Because the thing that the main thing, everybody has strong opinions and feelings about events that happen in the world, but then turning those into poetry, turning them into something that includes mystery and complexity and ambiguity is something that's really difficult to do. So I don't know if do you remember how that poem in particular came to be in the form that it is, that the way that it moves so much from couplet to couplet?
Yeah, I think part of it was that the UN report had a lot of individual stories. Uh, and I remember I wrote this at a point when I was having a weekly exchange with a poet friend where we'd send prompts and word lists. She loved prompts and I love word lists. So I reading this now, I remember a few of those words were word list words. And what I love about word lists is that they in trying to put together words, I mean, what would make me die happy as a poet is if just once I managed to put together two words from the English language that nobody else has ever put together before. And and I find that's a real source of creativity. And then uh, I think I was also, while I did my MFA, I read a lot of Eastern European poets who are much more influenced by, I guess I'd say semi-surrealism, not surrealism where you have no idea what's happening, um, uh, but I found that very freeing as a poet to read people who are less narrative and not American.
Mm-hmm. Well, there was that great line which Hemant Malik points out: "My two arms became mother and father."
Uh-huh.
It's just such a moving line. Do you remember how that line, like some lines just pop in your head, or guess I'm kind of wondering
Yeah.
what your writing process is like in general. Like are you one of the writers who does a rough draft with a lot of stuff and then you carve it into the poem that it becomes, or does it come out in sort of this process?
Well,
And how
I'm
does a line
I'm
like that come to you? Yeah.
I'm more of a carver than an ad. When people say, "Oh, I think you should add something," I panic because from journalism, you just all compact and more and more and more and more compact. Um, you know, I think I just got into the voice of the child there, and in my mind, I was picturing a child. But to be honest, I almost cut that out of the
Hmm.
poem because it it could have ended earlier. I don't know. I wondered. I worried a little bit about it being too, to use a fine English word, schmaltzy. Um, but people respond to it. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. Well, I'm glad you didn't because that is a great line. So one of the things you talk about is finding the heat of a poem, and
Mhm.
I'm curious what you mean in particular by that, and how do you know when you found the heat?
Well, this was another thing. I mean, I think there are many ways to say it, but um, this was another thing. And Marvin used to keep a scroll on his uh, well, first originally typewriter and a literal scroll of paper, like from an adding machine. But I kept a file. I have a file on my computer in which he would write every night, usually in the middle of the night, but I write every few days. And the idea is to sit down and not plan to write a poem or even plan to write, and especially not plan to write a good poem, just to start writing. And at some point, he used to say, and when it starts to boogie, then you take that and and then you start to make a poem. And I think that's another way of saying where the heat is. Sometimes it takes a while to figure out why were you interested in that news story, or why were you so taken by that particular doe in the yard, or what is it that that really matters? And as you write, often in my process, what will happen is some concern I have um, about a kid or about somebody else in the family, or about the world, or about the natural world, will just kind of rise to the surface.
Hmm.
Um, and at that point, oh, that's what this is about. That's why this image is so resonant. This is what I'm thinking about right now.
Yeah. And do you have like things that you feel something deeply about, but then you don't get to that place? Is it easy to recognize if you've not like found the heat? Or is it
Oh yeah. I mean, I have tons of false starts and that I that I don't make into poems. I also have a writing group that really keeps me honest. So sometimes when I think I've found it, they'll let me know otherwise. But usually, if anything, I err on the side of not bringing anything out into the light, something that just doesn't, even if I think I know what it's about, it just doesn't somehow capture it. You have to be willing to let stuff go, which is, another part of the of loving to revise, and not waiting for the muse. The other part of that is not refusing to just get rid of stuff. It might be working for you, but for nobody else.
Yeah, well, it's definitely important. I mean, that self. It's not really a self critic. It's just a self awareness. It's so easy to
Self-editing.
hmm
Yeah, self-editing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes, I mean, with a writing group, one person will love one line and another person will hate it. But if everybody, I'm in a writing group where there's five of us. If everybody else says, "What? Don't get this," they're telling you something you should listen to.
Yeah. Well, I should say if anybody has any questions for Susan, please leave them in the chat window, either on Facebook or YouTube, and I'll pass them along. We already have a couple good questions that I will. But and if it helps to also just put the word question at the beginning, so I know that's what it is as I'm scrolling back up and looking through. Also, if you haven't clicked the like button yet, there are always more than twice as many people who are watching live but have not clicked like, and it helps if you do. So click like right now if you haven't yet. Susan, the next poem up is another one of the Science News prose poems. Do you want to read that?
Sure. And I should say, I scatter these through the book to give the book a false sense of unity because I don't have a project when I write a book. So this is from the second section. Science News. Which one was? Oh, yeah. Science news: dogs were domesticated once from a lost population of wolves. Old friend, chowing down your easy supper, dream twitching on your doggy bed. Better if you had bared your teeth, cornered and devoured us early before we swallowed forests, ripped the flesh off mountains, bloodied earth entire. Better if you domesticated us before we turned into this lost population of wolves.
Yeah, so Science News, dogs were domesticated once from a lost populations of wolves. That's from Democracy of Fire by Susan Cohen. One of the questions by Faye Srala was about the title Democracy of Fire. Is that the idea that democracy is not always available to some? Is this a line in one of the poems? And we're going to see the poem that comes from later. But I'm curious, why, how you chose this title. You mentioned just now that you don't have a project when it comes to poems, and so how did you know how to format the book like this? Why was that the title that you chose?
So it is a line in a poem. It's the last line in a poem, and it's the last poem in the book, so it's the last line in the book. And the poem, as you'll see, is about fire. I live in California, and we're always on fire. But more than that, the poem says it better than I can put it into words. If there's any theme to the book, it's that we're all in this together. Let me just say.
Yeah.
And that's in a personal sense. I have a lot of poems about long marriage. That's in a political sense as part of a society, and that's in a planetary sense, in that we all share the same planet.
Another question, this is from Cindy Gore. She says, do you ever realize you're putting journalistic constraints on a poem you're writing? Which is an interesting question. And what are journalistic constraints, I guess?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what she means by that, but yes. So here's one. When I started out writing poetry, early on, I took an UC extension class in which various local but very well-known poets came in and talked about their work. And several of the poets who came in, I think Jane Hirschfield and Hannah Block, who later became a good friend of mine, both confessed that they had changed details in their poems to make them better poems. I think it was Jane Hirschfield who just changed the make of a car because she liked the sound better of another car. And Hannah had changed. She wrote a poem about the coincidence of events on the day of a marriage, and she later confessed that they actually hadn't all happened on the same day. And I was horrified about that because as a journalist, I thought, you got to work with what's true. And I said this not when either of them were there, but in our discussion. And the teacher asked for a show of hands on who thought a poem had to stick literally to the truth. And I was the only one in the whole class who raised my hand. And it took me a while. I did a lot of thinking about that to lose that constraint in that I will make things up now. I still believe a poem has to be true. You have to make up something in the service of truth. And I think that we can all spot poems that are not true, in that the sentiment is false somehow, or it hasn't earned its ending or some other way. But I will change something now to make it a better poem because that's poetic license, right?
Yeah. So I wonder if you could talk about that. That is such an interesting topic just all the time, is what truth is. Like, what do we mean by true? Because there's and I feel there's some kind of way that, to me, if you think about like facts as like details, but then a set of facts added together become a higher truth, And so there's a way that like truth is sort of a one level up, like it's like calculus instead of arithmetic or something. And
I never did the calculus personally.
but it's like an extra dimension or something, that's beyond, because you can have, if you have certain facts that are aligned, to paint a picture, you triangulate from them. They can all each be individually true, but point to a total dishonesty, which is like what politics is about 90% of the time, maybe, or what like so much of marketing is, and so much of like that kind of aim. And so you can get the facts can be right when the actual truth is wrong, which is something that's really fascinating to think about. But then a poem is in service to that truth that's right, maybe across time and space, or across bigger sets of facts. It's really interesting what we mean, because we all know what we mean. We have kind of a truth detector. We can feel it in our body when something's being honest, and yet the details aren't necessarily what matter. So what do you think about that?
I'll give you an example of that. Was the poem I just had in Rattle about wanting to breed rock pigeons. There's no way I want to breed rock pigeons. um, uh, uh, but the truth of that poem was that I spent a lot of my life feeling like I was in the wrong life and looking at other lives and trying to imagine myself in them. And I think a lot of that was feeling stymied in what I'd grown up thinking I was going to do, which was to be a poet. And I don't feel that way so much anymore. But the details of that poem were accurate as far as, I read a newspaper article about a couple who raised doves. But my statement that I'd like to raise them is a lie. I mean, it's a fiction. But the poem is true to my sense that maybe I should be doing something that helps people, and that somehow a simpler kind of more more direct way, like raising birds that give people pleasure at weddings and that help them out at funerals.
Yeah,
I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, it does too. And I'm thinking, I asked earlier what you took from journalism into poetry, but I do wonder if you think there's something that journalists could learn from poets in the pursuit of that deeper truth. I mean, I think you have that bioethics background. And a great example is the way that science news, like the stories that we've been told, they're press releases that come out of the universities, and they have an interesting angle, but then we know deep down that there's the replication crisis where so many of the studies are going to be overturned, and they don't mention the counter studies that show the opposite going on, but you can lie by omission kind of to be writing about that one study that showed a certain result that way. And so do you think there's it's so hard to do though, because journalism, we want to be objective, and that's so important. But there's sort of that sense of truth. There's something subjective about it. Do you know what I mean? And so we don't want to let that enter. But yet you can feel when there's a truth versus a truthiness. You know what I mean? And so do you think that poets or journalists can learn something from poets by pursuing that higher truth more? Does that make sense?
Well, when I used to teach journalism, I used to jettison the word objective because I don't think that's humanly possible, and just say, I think you need to be fair. Not purposely distort or leave out a point of view. But as to what journalists can learn from poets, I think it's more about language, which is just the precision of language. Yeah.
Well, let's read. We've been sort of tangenting for a while. Let's do another poem next.
Tangenting. Yeah. Is that a verb?
I think I just made it up. That's my poetic license.
Good for you. I aspire to make it work. Okay. So
like weather forecast, yeah.
Yeah, weather forecast. Okay. Weather forecast. And this starts with an epigraph from Dostoevsky. Later on, besides civic grief, he also began falling into champagne. Morning will buckle its marine layer, its predictable cloud belt. You'll try to sidle up to words, barefoot and in pajamas. Listening to Bach, you'll believe everything the cello says about regret. You'll read the news and adorn yourself with civic grief, those tattered garlands. Chances are good the cosmic gears will grind morning into afternoon before you notice. Some sun might just break the skin of fog. Your lover will come home. You'll roast a chicken and forget to be sad. The night will offer its wine-flavored promises.
Yeah, another beautiful. I love that line. Listening to Bach, you'll believe everything the cello says about regret. What a great line that is. And I was thinking about what you said that Marvin Bell said, where you sit down, you can't try to write a good poem, you know? And when you have poems, you come up with great lines like that. How do you avoid trying to write more great lines? You know, for an analytical type person, isn't that a difficulty that you fall into this like trap of like, oh, I did it before, let me do it again. Then you're trying to do it again and you ruin somehow the spontaneity that comes from.
Well, I think that's what sitting down thinking you're not necessarily going to write a poem and certainly not a great poem does for you. You just write until you recognize a line. And maybe you write, 30 lines and there's one in it that just hits you. Another person long before I went to Pacific, I went to Napa Valley Writers Conference and I spent a week there with Stephen Dunn. And Stephen Dunn used to say, no bad lines. So I think, you write and then you go back and maybe you could start out by looking for the bad lines and you take those out. Maybe they're just, in service to getting you from one place to another. And, so.
Going back to this topic of truth, Mark Grinier asks, if poems are or can be fictions, is there any need for the facts that are in the poems, the images, the dates and times, the places to be accurately described or not?
Probably not, but it took me a long time to be able to say that. My sense when I heard Hannah Block say these events didn't all happen all on the same day, the caterer's son didn't die that morning, whatever was in the poem, I felt kind of betrayed as a reader. But I think, but that wasn't what the poem was about. It wasn't really about coincidence. It wasn't a poem about coincidence. So I don't think you can make up things that that make people distrust a poem. Like you can't say something that's obviously not true that matters that people would know about, like change who won World War II or something, and just pretend that's true. I mean, yeah. So in that sense, I think it's true, but yeah, but you have to be true to the essence of the essence has to.
Yeah, yeah. I think the key word I think you said is credibility. Like you need credibility as a voice, and that part of how the poem was presented, the care that you put into the music of the language, and that the details feel true, or what gives you credibility and lets people be, we haven't talked really about the way that poems are empathy machines, but the empathy is what is really the goal and the heart of poems. And so if we have credibility, if people are believing us and being on our side and knowing that we're authentic, then you can have a lot more of that empathetic feeling where your emotion becomes my emotion and we get to share the emotion within the space of the poem. So I think that I'd say that's why it's important. And
I think that's I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think that's another difference between journalism and poetry. Empathy is a huge, I'm not sure there's any other form of writing that can create as much empathy as opposed to sympathy. I think as poetry, journalism can create sympathy, but poetry allows you to slip on somebody else's life, basically, for, 10 lines or 20 lines. That's why I love all the varieties of backgrounds of all the people who are writing and publishing poetry now, because it's a way of entering lives and letting people enter your life. And the world doesn't have enough empathy. So if we can add to that, I'd say that's the biggest contribution to politics we can make.
Yeah, well, definitely. Well, let's see. We have two poems left to share. Do you want to read Just When next?
Okay. Just when. I think this was probably a pandemic poem, if I'm remembering right. Just when, after I choose a rock midway down the slope and sit to watch the ocean, a red-tailed hawk claims the rock below, observes the way I eat my apple, scans the cliffside vetch and wart, launches, pounces on an insect, then retakes its boulder. I'm used to being the only hungry predator here, but the hawk does not seem bothered. It lets me admire its hook of beak, the holstered power in its folded wings, its outsized claws resting on the lichen-like scythes. Two ravens make a showy landing on the rock behind me, thick-billed, close, each squawk a detonation. I get a little bothered, sandwiched between the red tail and the ravens, heads like war hammers. Still, this privilege of sudden beauty, and just when I'd given up on mercy in the world.
And that was Just When from Democracy of Fire by Susan Cohen. Let's see. I trying to remember. Leading to that poem, I was going to ask a question, and it was, what was it though? I guess we'll have to move on. It'll come back to me. No, I don't remember what it was. You mentioned that empathy is the thing that we can get from poems, that we can't from other places, and that's the thing about writing news poems about current events and politics, that becomes difficult because. It's so easy to write a poem about your political opinion and perspective and to sort of cheer on your team and talk about your own good values and how they're better than those other values those other bad people have. And then everybody reading the poem says, yes, I have those good values too. And I always wonder if, I don't feel, to me personally, like we gain anything by doing that. Like we gain by exploring and asking questions and expanding our understanding of things and using empathy. But I do feel like I maybe have a blind spot. Like in the same way I have a blind spot for like a fixed religion. I have a blind spot for maybe the community feel that makes that a good thing. Like the fact that we can all sort of cheer on our feelings and be on the team together. Is that something that poetry can and should be providing, or do you think poems about politics and current events need to be exploring deeper? I guess is what I'm wondering.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the poem, although I'm sure I'm guilty of it at times because it's hard to resist. But the poem that just comes across as patting myself on the back for having the right political opinions and doesn't give anybody anything new. I mean, if it's not surprising to me, it's not surprising to anybody else. To go back to Marvin, we had a lot of discussions about political poems because I kept persisting in trying to write a decent one. And he said, I have nothing against political poems as long as you don't forget the poetry. And I think that's the key. You can't forget the poetry. And I'd like to think with that poem about State of the World's Children, I mean, I really had that in mind. You can't forget the poetry. And there's a poem, I wasn't going to read it today, but there's a poem I wrote about a young woman who crossed the border illegally and was shot and killed by immigration agents. And I first wrote that poem as a persona poem as her, and that really didn't fly. And then I realized the way out of that was, first of all, I was not to write it as her, but also to admit in the poem some complicity, which was a line in the poem about we're told we shouldn't write that. I can't remember the exact line, but it's something to the effect of we're told that we shouldn't Wish I could remember it. Anyway, um, uh, that we shouldn't write in somebody else's name, that this was exploitative or something
Hmm.
like that, appropriation. I didn't use that word in the poem. Anyway, by admitting, and then I said, but she crossed the border and now she's ours.
Hmm.
So that was a way of trying to deal with that question. I don't know if it was successful or not, but
Yeah.
I
Well,
agree with you. I don't see there's more effective things to make our ways to make ourselves feel better about politics than writing, um, an obvious poem, which is to go out and do something political. I mean, a poem
mhm.
is not a political action.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, do you want to read that poem since you talked about it? I think, the poems are
Uh,
on the shorter side, so I think we have a little bit of time.
oh, okay, great. Do you know what page that's
What's it
on?
called?
Oh, yeah. Okay, I can find it. It's a very long title, even though the poem isn't that long. Again, a poem taken from a news story.
Is it the photograph of Claudia
Yeah,
Patricia Gomez? It's on page 27.
27.
Okay.
Photograph of, and I won't say this right, but Claudia Patricia Gomez Gonzalez, killed by U.S. Border Patrol agent. Her aunt holds it up so we can see more colors than brown. Purple, ruby, and canary yellow stripe her apron in the photo, embroidered butterflies with magenta wings above the orange trumpet flowers on her bodice. How small she is, 19, fists on hips, facing forward towards her lover who wants her to join him in Virginia. She squints, and fatigue underlines her eyes, as if her Mayan village offers too much sun, along with too much worry and too little work. Only the bush behind her prospers, big-leafed and glossy. She wanted to be an accountant, her aunt tells reporters. You can't get more American than wanting enough money to count. Afterwards, a witness described her face, one side dirt, the other blood, in a junk strewn lot less than a mile into Texas. We're told it's wrong to make a poem from someone else's tragedy, but she crossed the border and became ours.
Yeah, great last line there, and another wonderful poem from Democracy on Fire by Susan Cohen. Yeah, back to the writing process, Dr. Q wanted to know how you know when a book's finished, how a book comes together. So how did you know? It's your third full length book of poetry. How do you know when you have a book and how to shape it and when it's done?
I don't know. When the poems have accumulated, poems that you have some confidence in, you get enough of them, you start thinking it might be a book, and then you just start trying to put them together somehow. Some people have projects, and I admire that, but I've just never been able to do it. And you start putting it together, and then maybe you see some holes, like, well, with the science news, um, I had three or four of them, and I thought, if I wrote more of these, that could help tie it together. And yeah, so, but I can't really tell you how you find ways that the poems speak to each other, and you shuffle them around, and
Hmm. Yeah, I think the advice of that is probably similar to the advice of not writing a good poem. It's just like don't try, keep pushing the poems out, and then eventually it'll make itself clear in the
well, I wish I
chaos.
could. I wish I could. I had the fortitude or stamina or
Hmm.
inspiration maybe to think, oh, I could write a book about and actually, come up with
Uh-huh.
60 pages or whatever, focus that way. Doesn't work that way for me.
Yeah. Well, let's wrap it up with one last poem, Susan. Do you want to read the poem where the title comes from?
Yes. So this poem was written right after a fire in California, and at a time when our utility company PG&E was blacking out different locations for as long as a week because their equipment was starting still start a lot of these fires. And at that point, we were in a tiny town in Sonoma County called Bodega, and they were offering free food. So that's the backstory. And thank you so much for having me, Tim. It's really been fun.
Oh, definitely my pleasure.
Fire season with rolling blackouts at the Bodega Bar and Grill. After a week of enforced night, light breaks over the pool table, a clack of cues to crack the silence. All that was perishable is gone into 2 dumpsters out back. New on a whiteboard behind the bar, these offerings: pork belly, salmon, short ribs, butterscotch pudding with or without whipped cream. Also, everything is free for fire survivors, first responders, or anyone who needs it to be. Generosity is a poem tonight, the language of kindness to strangers and gratitude to the volunteers whose red engines screamed from the firehouse next door. No one will argue bumper stickers, wonder who arrived with gun racks or rainbow flags, attack a slogan on someone's sweat-stained cap. Just walking through the warped doorway that never keeps the flies out is a celebration of survival, a free offer, a feast, a toast to the shared citizenship of flesh. Here's to the live and kicking, those with hungers and with thirsts, waitresses, barkeeps, cooks, paying customers or not, praying customers or not, sooty cows in 2 dry hills whose shit sustains the flies. Here's to the frantic flies, to all of us powerless, while flames choose what to burn in this raging democracy of fire.
Yeah, that was Susan Cohen reading the last poem in the book, Fire Season with Rolling Blackouts at the Bodega Bar and Grill, from her book, Democracy of Fire. Susan, thanks so much for being a guest. So much fun talking to you tonight and sharing your work. It's really been a pleasure.
Thank you, Tim. It's been fun.
Yeah, thanks. Yes, once again, that was Susan Cohen. You can find Susan, all of her books, at her website, susancohen-writer.com. That's Susan, S-U-S-A-N, Cohen, COHEN-writer.com. So find that and find Democracy of Fire and everything else. Now we're going to take a quick break and go to our prompt lines. And the prompt for this week was to write a poem with self-portrait in the title that features an odd bird. So we know where that poem came from, with Susan Cohen's poem from the most recent issue of Rattle, that self-portrait, something about doves. I can't remember the exact title. But that was the prompt for this week. Write a poem with self-portrait in the title that features an odd bird. Now, as always, the max time on camera should be about 3 minutes. It's a 1-page max, but if you have a longer poem and it fills up the whole page, kind of jump right in. If it's a shorter poem, feel free to talk more. But we want to make sure we get to everybody and don't stay up too late so people are dropping out, falling asleep. So make sure you be mindful of that. Now, if you'd like to share a poem, email it to promptlines@rattle.com. That's promptlines, all one word, at rattle.com. That way I can show the poem on the screen as you read it. Then find the Zoom link, which I'm about to deploy on Facebook and YouTube. In the chat windows there, just jump on if you'd like to share a poem for the prompt, but only if you'd like to share a poem. If you just want to enjoy everybody else's poems, all you have to do is sit right where you are, because the best place to watch is wherever you are, because then you get to see the poems too on the screen as the folks read them. But if you want to join, please do, and we'll be right back with more poetry. And we're back. Thanks for your patience. I'm here with our prompt poems editor, our associate editor, and my wife, Katie Dozier. Hey, Katie. How's it going?
I like that I have 3 titles you have to say every time. That's like a power move, right?
It is. Oops, hang on a second. I messed this up. I shouldn't have done that.
Okay.
Okay. That's better. Now, what do you have? The prompt for this week was to... Oops. No. Wait. Hang on. Where am I going with this thing? Oh, that's right. No. Oh, the problem is this. Okay. There we go. The prompt for this week. Oh, gosh.
Okay, the prompt for this week.
Hang
Do
on.
I need to just remember it? I can.
No, I
Okay.
got it. The prompt for this week. I just got all a little discombobulated.
Okay. It's okay.
Okay, there we go. The prompt for this week is to write a poem with self-portrait in the title that features an odd bird.
And I'd like, can the screen also feature us right now instead of...
Oh, yeah. Okay, there we go.
There we go. Hello.
Everything is right with the world. Okay.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. I just kind of had a little...
Well, you've been doing a lot. Today, Tim made lasagna, which is in the oven now.
It's true.
So today we were celebrating Mother's Day late because we didn't have the girls both of them until today. So you've been doing a lot. You've been running around. You cooked a lot today. Okay.
Oh, well, thanks.
Yes. So...
Okay. So the prompt for this week was to write a poem with self-portrait in the title that features an odd bird. And I have to ask, did you write this knowing you'd be writing about this?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I did not. So Tim's saying that because it does feature one of my favorite books. And I can prove that too because I ordered the book for the kids after I wrote the poem.
Well, that was my question. Did you order it and then...
This is a rare week where I actually wrote this on Monday because I had the idea and I was just like, I'm going to write the poem. So.
Okay. What?
I'm sorry. I just don't like to... when it scrolls during it, if you scroll... Oh, okay. I see what you mean. I'm sorry. Okay. Self-portrait as a penguin. First line from a book by Helen Lester. Tacky was an odd bird. When the others marched, he sashayed. When the others adjusted their bow ties, he unbuttoned his Hawaiian shirt. When the others swan dove off a glacier, Tacky cannonballed. Flightless. If I never feathered poetry.
Interesting.
So Tacky the Penguin is an amazing, very young kids children's book series. And my mom found it for me, I'm sure, because my mom read me 1 million books when I was little. And it's this whole series about this bird that's amazing. And I have read it during the Rattlecast because Charlotte came and brought it to me. So I've read it within the last 45 minutes. And that's how I love, children's books that help us identify. And I was like, hey, it's okay to be weird. Awesome. Thanks, Tacky the Penguin.
So this is a whole series of books.
It's a whole series.
I didn't know because I have enjoyed the Tacky the Penguin.
3 Cheers for Tacky.
Yeah.
Also a classic.
Well, great to know. Well, hopefully we've shot the sales of Tacky the Penguin up.
I know. It's, yep.
Especially now that we own the hard copy. That thing's going to be valuable.
Very valuable.
Yeah. Okay. So, yes, that was a wonderful little Hyben, Self-Portrait as a Penguin. And that book is by Helen Lester. Okay. And now mine, I picked a shoebill stork. Do you know what a shoebill stork?
No, but that's very
yeah,
exciting.
I should have showed the picture of a shoebill stork because it's the weirdest, creepiest bird. And you'll recognize it once you. And I just thought, what is the oddest bird? It's this.
It's creepy.
I know, it's this creepy one. So here, let me put it. It looks kind of frightening too.
I feel like I saw that at a zoo once.
Yeah. So it's a North African bird or Central African, and it's got this huge beak. It's very much related to dinosaurs.
I did see this at the Tampa Zoo because I went there multiple times, and that was the zoo that I read the book about once too. Yeah. So I've seen this bird. Wow.
Yeah, it is some bird. Look at that thing.
Whoa.
But it's really not that. It's not scary, even though it's 5 feet tall and looks like that.
It's 5 feet tall.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, I wrote. Oh yeah, and the other thing, I didn't get the noise in there. Jared Campbell says the noise they make is amazing. It's kind of like a machine gun. It's like,
What?
Yeah. And they only talk to each other in this bang their beak together in a machine gun way.
Like humans.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I didn't get that in there because I ended up doing a tetrameter sonnet.
Wow.
And so I didn't get to the machine gun beak or the fact that they poop on their own legs to cool themselves off. There were a lot of details.
Whoa,
about
that edited. I'm glad that didn't make it in the poem. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So this is self-portrait as a shoebill stork. Here you go. There it is. Self-portrait as a shoebill stork. Most days I feel like a dinosaur, motionless at the edge of a marsh. Oh, I should say, because of the critique of the week, Sorry. I was, we talked about rhyme and how important it is to not follow the rhyme and have enjambment. And I kind of wanted to challenge myself to have full stops as much as possible.
So defying your own advice.
I was seeing how far I could go. So these are, I have a lot of full stops until I couldn't take it anymore.
Well, that could give us the machine gun type vibe.
There you go. Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, okay. Self-portrait as a shoebill stork. Most days I feel like a dinosaur, motionless at the edge of the marsh, a wooden clog strapped to my face. What's that, they say on the other shore? The evening light is low and harsh. My silhouette seems out of place. Two legs as thin as drying reeds are hoisting up a capsized boat and dumping all they once contained. My grandpa was a T-Rex. Those seeds still swim in me, but my throat are lungfish, their lives ordained when split within my beak. I wish this surface weren't the only dish. That is my self-portrait as a shoebill stork.
That was very interesting.
Yeah, they're weird animals. They're very, very old. Yeah, that's true. Okay. Well, let's see what everybody else has. Got a great crew on hand. Let's go to Amanda Harris first. We'll see how fast I have to get to her poem fast enough.
Before she's too fast for you.
Reading the whole thing. Hey, Amanda, how you doing? All right, well, I try to mix it up, keep everybody on their toes. And so what do you have for us today, Amanda?
Shadow acts like it is
Wait,
enemy.
Amanda, I'm sorry, Amanda. I screwed up, and I forgot to turn your volume on. And so let's do it again. Take it from the top.
Start over?
Yeah,
okay.
Start over from the top.
All right. All right. Can you guys hear me now?
We can, yeah. I mean, the problem is we could hear all the time, but in case, Susan Cohen said something or whatever, I mute it, and then I forgot to unmute
So bonus part about this is I get to hear the poem 1.5 times, which I'm enjoying. So sorry.
Okay. All right. Self-portrait with pelican. In another life, in another universe, I am the greedy neck that abducts the body. Bodies, I say, are things built to declare war, but all I see is shadow and earth, earth and shadow. Shadow acts like it is the enemy of dirt. Observe the way it takes flight, spitting at what it does not own. Only birds could be this territorial. Look at how its greedy universe abducts the neck.
What an interesting last line. That's really cool turn.
That definitely is. Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing that, Amanda. Always such a pleasure.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, it's Amanda Harris with let me fix this. There's so much buttons to push.
Self-portrait with pelican was Amanda's poem.
Self-portrait with pelican. By Amanda Harris. Yeah, great. Let's go next to Jared Campbell.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, Jared, how you doing?
Doing okay. How are you?
Great. Yeah, good to see you. So what do you got for us?
Okay. So here's the thing, right? So I did 2 unrhymed sonnets of 2 different flightless birds because flightless birds are the most poetic birds.
They definitely are.
That's where I went to, Jared. Yep.
The pigeon, which is the beautifulest bird.
Oh, yeah, the beautifulest bird.
Pigeon, which is the beautifulest bird. So the Peleognaths is a whole family of different kinds of birds that it is still some branches of it still exist. So like ostriches and kiwis and emus and things like that are all part of this family that started to diverge from other kinds of dinosaurs about 60 million years ago. And the terror birds was a family of birds that were the apex predators in South America until South America stopped being an island and created the Isthmus of Panama and started trading animals between like North America and South America, and birds stopped being the apex predators. So until that time, there were these flightless birds that were like the size of grizzly bears, going around South America and eating everything.
Yeah, they're terrifying. It's a great name, the terror birds.
I know, right? I love the
terrifying.
straightforwardness of it. Yeah. So 2 self-portraits. The first Peleognath, approximately 60 million years ago. Stars disappear and purple-black becomes intoxicated rose and orange and gold. The searing arc of sun breaks through the plain, just as I broke through the shell of self-sufficient, finite, comfortable life, and climbed out into a cold, hungry, and boundless world. I thank my absent mother for the palace of my confinement, as my egg tooth loosens, falls from my beak, even this hardest part as transient as anything. I run. I plant my foot and pull the world to me. Everything I hunger for is mine, and I want nothing more than to run, to search for the limit I'm confident I'll never find.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, that was the first of 2 self-portraits. Let's hear the other one.
The last Devincentia terror bird approximately 2 million years ago. There was a time my bellows, strong and deep enough to tingle in the feet as well as in the ear, would prompt an answer in kind from a mate, or sometimes from a rival. Now my singing fades away and dies on an oblivious horizon. I run to the waterhole and kill an antelope and kill a sloth and kill and eat till sick. There's always more no matter how I kill, and full of death I run away from them, from their stupid mammalian grunts. I run to the savannah, that earth that's always felt so right and solid underneath my feet. I chase the redness dying in the west.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I love the last line too, and the way that you got into the persona of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe a Halloween costume coming up.
Yeah.
That sounds fun. That sounds terrifying.
I know, it really
It
would
would
be
be.
really
A,
scary.
a 10-foot bird with like a hatchet kind of beak. Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah, they're rough. And one was the didn't the in the South Pacific, wasn't there one that only died off like 2,000 years ago or something?
Oh, I don't know.
Or maybe 5?
I don't.
It wasn't that
Well,
long
close
ago.
for comfort.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Yeah.
I'll have to relook that up, but I think so. But yeah, that's terrible.
I'm
Yeah.
starting to become scared of birds. After this, we're going to watch Alfred Hitchcock. And
Yeah,
cry.
well, even looking at that crane that comes,
I
you know, the way that
cranes are scary. Sandhill
then-
cranes, like when you're on a bike and they have that needle beak and they're like right at your level on a bike, they were terrifying.
yeah,
in
and the way
Florida.
their head, the way
Yeah.
that their head doesn't move,
Ah,
and then
no,
their
it's
body
scary.
does, and then bam, and that's the same way that the that shoebill one does it. Like when it's about to pounce, its head doesn't move, and it's like creeping forward.
I'm rooting for more penguin
Yeah.
poems.
Okay, well we'll see.
So Christiana just pointed out the cassowary, which I was definitely thinking about. Like
Oh,
that's
yeah.
this bird. I gotta write a cassowary poem, and I said I gotta go bigger. I gotta go bigger than cassowary. Not dangerous enough.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
well, the Audubon
Jared.
Society would be proud of this episode so far. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Jared. All right, there was 2 self-portraits by Jared Campbell. Let's go next to Christiana Doucette.
Hello.
Hi.
I
Hey,
messed
Christiana,
up my
yeah.
title. It was supposed to have self-portrait at the beginning, so
We'll
I
just
apologize
insert
for
it.
that.
We'll insert self-portrait. We're just going to go with that.
Yeah, I put it at the beginning now,
Well, everything is open to interpretation, though. You know.
right?
I don't
But
know,
it was
that's
kind of
pretty
in the
objective
prompt.
in the title one. We're giving it. It's there. I can see it. I think everybody else can believe too.
Okay. Yeah.
Self-portrait
Yeah.
at the Derby. It even works without any edits.
Mhm.
so.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now it's self-portrait at the Derby. There you go. And I'm going to jump right in because it's a longer one.
Okay.
14,000 rubber ducks jockey for position above Reedy Falls, and I haul a bag big with water bottles and snacks for the toddler and sunscreen for making the day an event at the races. At the first crack, the crowd packs tight and the black-eyed birds bob forward. I'm bobbing too, fishing for the right shoe of my youngest who has leaned too far and dropped her sandal. Nothing I can't handle, but as I bob, she's starting to dismantle the bag, duck derby swag swinging this way and that. The foam hat we hand-decorated crumples as she dumps all of it out, scrounging for sweet. Her bare feet dangle by the bank. No thanks for rescued souls. She's wholly absorbed in opening the packet where the animal crackers wait. The front-runner ducks enter the straight, but they can't find that final gate, can't make that last turn. Instead, spinning donuts in the whirlpool, where Reedy River usually veers, but now foam noodles steer those on the surface away from the bank. The announcer cranks the speed up, words a blur as rank and file ducks turn the falls into a yellow squall, a rubber wall. My toddler wants to hold them all, but then at the last, the first bird crosses the finish. Spurred on, the whole flock finds the chute crowding down the plastic lane, and my gymnastic bane gains her feet, cheats my hold, and hits the cold water hard, splashing. As I snatch her back to me, she giggles with glee. I bite a smile into a scowl. Who do you think you are, you silly goose? I's duck, duck, goose, she howls, and all the held back laughter cuts loose.
Aw, that's such a fun poem. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. And I always, love the energy and the rhymes and the pace of it. And a sweet, sweet poem, too.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that,
I
Christina.
included a photo as well.
Oh, yeah?
Yes.
The,
Separate.
Oh, here we
Because-
go. That's great.
Some
Okay,
of the
let me put it-
14,000 ducks.
Oh, wow. That is a lot of duckies. Well, thanks so much for sharing that, Christiana. That was really wonderful.
thank
Yeah,
you.
appreciate it. Yeah, Christiana Doucette with self-portrait at the Derby. Clearly. Okay,
Yes.
let's go next to Carla Schwartz.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can. Hey, Carla, good
Hi.
to see you.
Good to see everybody. My poem is not very long, but it was fun, and it's a prose poem, and it's called. Although I'll just add one more thing, which is that today we walked in the house and we have a glass door, and there was bird poop right on the door, which doesn't actually make sense. So I have another poem coming, I'm sure. But this one, okay. Future self-portrait as a female bowerbird. Oh, and the male bowerbird apparently makes these ornate nests to attract the female.
Nice quality.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, he works hard. That's a lot of work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Future self-portrait as a female bowerbird. You, my bowerbird, planning our greenhouse as elaborately as possible, constructing a beam to support the as yet unbasemented portion of our house, transplanting the peach trees away from the house, planning to reconstruct the soil, the landscape of our front yard with hills, walls, and slopes I don't even fully understand. But there will be excavation. There will be a basement with water, tubs of it for passive heating and cooling. And there will be glass, the room itself, at least the least of it. Now I have to make myself into a bowerbird who wants to grow plants in winter, who won't burn them in summer, to nest myself in there with you, my bowerbird, doing what you can't help but do. Make something beautiful, spread your feathers before me, that I may lie down bare for you and molt.
Great extended metaphor into a love poem. That was really
Yeah,
fun,
that's
Carla.
wonderful. Yeah, Carla,
Oh.
can I ask a question too?
Yes.
You write such great hyben, and for me, I have this thing now where I really I can't write a prose poem without wanting. So, like, is it that it
How do-
feels complete without the haiku, or what is it for you that made you stop at prose poem?
It did for me
Yeah.
feel complete without the haiku. That
Right.
was, yeah. Sometimes I can add a haiku later, but this one didn't feel like it needed anything
Yeah.
more.
Well, yeah, that makes sense. Because when you interviewed Lou Watts too, so I mean, like you don't want like a double sticking the landing situation. Like if the landing happens in the prose poem, it's a prose poem probably, right? But I always find it interesting because that's hard for me, Carla, as you probably appreciate.
Yes, I do. I totally do. So thank you for thinking of that question. And see you guys later. And I really enjoyed this tonight.
Great. Thanks,
Thanks,
Carla.
Carla.
Yep.
Thank you.
It was Carla Schwartz with a future self-portrait as a female bowerbird. Let's go to Nivedita next. Make sure we get her in while she can make it. Hey, Nivi, are you there?
Hello,
Hey,
Hi,
Nivi,
Tim.
yeah, great
Hi,
to see
Tim.
you.
Great to see you.
thank you. I'm working from home today, so I'm still sitting a bit relaxed here in my room.
Oh, nice. That's always
Nice.
fun. Yeah.
So, I also chose a sort of Central South American bird. It's called a quetzal, and it's like when it's a chick, it's this really dull, gray, boring sort of bird. But then once it grows up, it's literal transformation of a phoenix. It's like it's called a resplendent quetzal, so it's like shades of blue and green and red. It's got this long tail feathers, and it looks just so pretty when it's grown up. So that's the bird that I chose to write
Interesting.
about.
Yeah.
Sort of an extended metaphor persona poem, sort of, not completely, but sort of in there.
Oh, great. Yeah, let's hear it.
Self-portrait of a quetzal. Hanging there in the once empty space between the lamp and the live, laugh, love quote is a masterpiece, one whose worth you don't even know yet. Striking and colorful, the resplendent hues call to you now, the same way they did before, but you chose to ignore. Now you glance, then look, do a double take. Is this the same bird? Is this the same mousy, gray, boring chick? The one that could do nothing before? Yes, it's the same one as that, only now more aware of the world around. Only now showing its true colors. With its resplendent plumage on full display, watch and be amazed as this quetzal now takes on the world.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I love that use of the extended metaphor there, and
Yeah.
really empowering poem. And here is the I think this is one of those episodes I'm gonna have Google up a lot, but here's the bird, so you can see it right there. Look at that. The
Wow.
long, beautiful, like teal colored tail feather.
I feel like that bird should be a poetic cliche. That is a lot to take in. That is wonderful. And
Yeah.
I've never heard of it before now.
Yeah,
So
the
thank you for that
quetzal.
too, Nivi.
Yeah, thanks so much, Nivi.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful poem. That was
Have a
Nivi
good evening.
Karthik. Yeah, you too. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Yeah, Nivi Karthik with a self-portrait as a quetzal. All right, and next, let's go to Linda Frith, who's been on a couple times, but not that often. So it's great to see you again, Linda.
Hi. How are you?
Yeah, good to
Am
see you.
I
Yeah, thanks
unmuted?
for being here.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. This is called Self-Portrait in the Wild. If I were a bird, I'd be a common titmouse, gray and unassuming, snub-nosed and small in size. I cannot match the splendor of the cardinal, cannot sing like the warbler or preen like a peacock. I will not fly away. Like an albatross, I faceplant often, well known for my awkward and often crash landings. I like nuts and seeds. Caterpillars entice me. I am not an eagle that serves to inspire a country to be all that it can be. But I am necessary, an integral part of the food chain, cleaning the environment of insects and caterpillars, dispersing seeds to grow, milkweed and coneflowers for butterflies to harvest, an appetizer for snakes, raccoons, and cats.
Yeah, very interesting use of that extended metaphor too. Once again, the common titmouse, which I should have pulled up so we could see one again. But most people have seen it. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that.
Thanks.
Linda.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
Yeah, Linda Frith with Self-Portrait in the Wild.
I like that, turning it into a list poem of sorts. I thought
Yeah.
this is very, very good thing to do.
Yeah.
A lot of nice images.
Let's go next to Dick Westheimer.
Hey all,
Hey,
Hi.
Dick, great to see you.
good to see you. I will just sort of jump right into. Oh, I did have one thing to say. Anybody who's kept chickens knows that birds are just dinosaurs. I mean, they.
Oh, I want chickens so badly.
Oh, do you look at them in the eye and you can see back to the Jurassic? It's just.
Yeah, they didn't go anywhere.
It's
those,
just.
those raptors just stayed here.
Yeah, now I don't want chickens.
Yeah, everything to a chicken. I said this in the chat. Everything to a chicken is food. It's just humans are like big food and too big for them to get in one bite. So, well, here we go. This is two truths and a lie, or two lies and a truth. Going back to your interview. Late spring paints a self-portrait of late spring. No one around here says tanager anymore. It's such a sad word to those who remember the old days when entire choirs of songbirds woke us each morning, as if their singing roused even the sun from its rest. Now, daybreak is at best a two-part harmony of a cardinal and robin arguing about whose chirrup is the most insistent. Today I was out early on my hands and knees weeding in the blackberry patch when I heard the slurred speech of, yes, a summer tanager in spring. I could almost hear the red in its song, as if it was so flush with excitement at its return that it could not remember the words of its own tune. I went back to weeding in the blackberry bed, that song in my head. My thin skin was dappled with blood-clotted gauze, snagged by thorns and the ragged ends of rusted fences and splintered wood. There are all sorts of prickly things around here, but today I was not one of them, not grieving the demise of all things good, not grousing about all the harm my species has done, not even noticing the knife-edged nerve under my hip bone that makes my leg go numb. I just whistled along with late spring as it sang in four-part harmony about itself.
Yeah, really, really wonderful descriptions. Love that, Dick, and
Yeah.
and especially the description of the bird's song itself.
Yeah, and I
really
love
cool.
the concept of the bird song waking the sun. That's really beautiful.
Yeah,
It's and the tanager. I'm not a bird person, but I check my little Merlin bird thing every day, and it's robins and cardinals all the way down most of the time. But yeah, we had a summer tanager here today.
Oh, wonderful.
Well, along with the same, here's a tanager for those watching at home. We gotta have all the birds on here.
Wow,
There's some beautiful birds.
wild-looking
Birds are just amazing. I do understand why people. I would like to do birding as a hobby. I really would.
I feel like I'm getting into it. I mean, I do like scream every time I see a cardinal. Like that's how
true.
that's like the gateway drug, right? You're like, there's a cardinal, which we're lucky. There are a lot of birds where we live, and we get to see a lot of.
I guess I
cardinals.
think it's the thing. Like being in a really wet, moist environment after being.
Yeah,
in the desert,
there's
it's
that.
like,
I'm
a lot of
seeing in the
variety.
YouTube the red. The red is the tanager that shows up here, the scarlet summer
Oh, really?
tanager.
Is it, that would be. I mean, see, that's where the skill comes in, right? Being like, hey, that's not a cardinal. It's a tanager.
No, it's a little tiny bird. Cardinals are
it's really
big
small.
obnoxious birds. Yeah.
They're beautiful. How dare you, sir?
I'll see you. Oh, bye.
Thanks, Dick.
Yeah, thanks so much, Dick. That was good. That was Dick Westheimer with Late Spring Paints a Self-Portrait of Late Spring. I love the title, too. It's a
I
great
feel like
title.
it's almost like a jab at me with the title, too. Like, here's your self-portrait in the title.
All right, well, let's
funny.
go to Hamet Malik next.
Hi.
Hey,
Hi.
Hamet. Great to see you.
Hi. You too. I'm afraid my bird makes a very fleeting appearance in my poem. All right, self-portrait as mirror. When I was the solver of problems, they kept looping. Dramas with sirens wailing, lights spinning, fresh ones inflating from a manhole in the street and joining the queue round the block. Mine was the crisis number in bold on every fridge. When my mood was on red, road rages found my lane, wove in and out like rogue sewing machines, with middle fingers for needles, on a techno beat. Traffic lights synced across the city to flash no as I approached, and my clothes said yes to sauce from every bite. When I didn't have enough hours in the day started deleting. First seconds, then minutes, it would pull down the sun swiftly, hold its tassel there, jostling against its arc, press ice to the side facing me. My mortal need for silence turned up the volume to screech and pop and snap. A microphone on a power trip atop an almighty amp jammed flat against my ears. Every mouth around me morphed into speaker boxes at the mountain of discarded words, all stuck on open, with jet-propelled fans in their throats. I closed my eyes, opened them. From my garden, a kookaburra agreed. I looked sideways at my mind, grabbed it with both hands, pulled it close. We walked together, closing windows. Some we had to inch back open, push out the fingers caught, then latched them, drew the blinds, painted them with sky.
Really interesting, Hammett. And it feels always, lately that your poems are, you're writing a book,
Yeah,
and then
they feel really-
and that there's an angle that you bring in the prompt. It's really fun to see that,
it really is.
and also to have the confidence, I think, that writing that much and then knowing it eventually that a bird would appear.
Yeah.
And then it does. So.
It did. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Well,
Thanks,
great stuff.
Hammett.
Yeah, as always. Thanks so much, Hammett. That was Hammett Malik with Self-Portrait as a Mirror. Let's go to Chelsea McClellan next.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, Chelsea. Great to see you.
Good to see you too. I was struggling this week with the prompt. I did a lot of research on birds and none was really clicking for me. And then yesterday we were walking through the city and picking up helicopter seeds. And it occurred to me maybe an odd bird doesn't have to really be a bird.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. I was hoping for some creative interpretations.
Yeah, we got
That.
one here.
Nice.
Yeah.
So it's called Self-Portrait, Praying a Friend Gets Help. From my park bench, I watch a little girl cradle a flightless bird in her hands, whisper affirmations to it. Fly, bird, fly. Why won't you fly? She tosses its body into the air, and for a second, the wind catches its wings, steadies them into flight position. But I know what the little girl does not, that its fall has already begun. Helicopter seeds. In soil, the sycamore finally soars.
Yeah, you love that haiku.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
really
yeah.
interesting. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for sharing that, Chelsea. Always such a pleasure. Great
Yeah,
poem.
thank you.
Thank you. Good
Yeah, I
night.
love that direction too. Self-Portrait, Praying a Friend Gets Help by Chelsea McClellan. All right, next let's go to Jeff Stumpo.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Jeff, great to see you.
Good to see you all too. So the quick context for writing this, because the poem will go very quickly, but I'm shouting out, I'm a regular at Slam Free or Die, which for 20 years has been the open mic and slam series in Manchester, New Hampshire.
Oh, that's right. Let me
and-
ask you. Yeah, well, continue.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just wondering. Slam seems to be like disappearing. It's so hard to find slams.
Yeah, we were
like
just
these
talking
days.
about
We were.
this. Yeah.
And so that slam is like going strong still through the pandemic and through the end of Slam Inc. and things like that.
I was going to say probably what you noticed is a combination of the pandemic happening and then a bunch of things slowly re-emerging after that. And also with Poetry Slam Incorporated going away and the National Poetry Slam going away because of all the internal drama. There are still tons of local and regional slams out there
Great.
that none of them are necessarily as big as, the height of national slams. But there's a lot if you look for them.
Yeah, because we were just talking about that. 'Cause it was so fun. I went to 2 national poetry slams, and it was just amazing. The energy there was so huge.
Yeah.
And I just
Me
miss
even
those
understanding
days.
the scope as Tim was describing it, I was like, wow, that's pretty wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was on teams that went in 2007 and 2010. And then I kind of left the slam scene for a long time. And now I'm back at Slam Free or Die just as a participant in open mics for the most part.
Oh, very
Great.
cool. Yeah. Well, we got to
sorry.
find some. Maybe Houston has one. I don't know.
Yeah. I believe in Houston. We'll see.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I was trying to say I wanted to shout out Mike Linehan, who's one of the staff members there, who led a workshop in persona poems on Tuesday after we got the prompt for this. So I went in knowing that I wanted to write the first draft of whatever I was going to write at this. And Brian inspired me last week. So I sat down and I wrote the first draft of a sonnet and then revised it in my head on the drive home.
Nice.
So I semi-apologize for this, but not really. Self-portrait, the beloved, a sonnet for Kanye West. Because genius is the second word out their mouths, I don't even notice the first word is flawed. I am the mountaintop, the cloud, the peacock, unmedicated as a goddamn monster. Harder, better, faster, stronger, no monk's marginalia, I am scripture's illustrated first letter. Read me back to me, it might save ya. I am thunderbird, feathered serpent, archetype and nightmare. I am the one to whom haters repent. I am the teeth to which your throat is bared. I am the wheel within the wheel, the plan within the plan. I am he who insists I am.
Wow.
Well, that was great.
Powerful, yeah.
Yeah, great sonnet for
Wow.
Kanye West.
And also impressive you're able to edit in your head as you drive. I have to focus just on driving. Maybe singing really loud, but that's about all I can do at the same time there.
I don't want to take up too much more, but just a quick anecdote. One of my chapbooks is called Villains. It was published by Finishing Line Press a bunch of years ago, and it's 20 villanelles, and I wrote them all in my head, driving back and forth in rural Tennessee.
Oh,
wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive.
That
Cool.
definitely is. Yeah, something to aspire to. Thanks,
Yeah,
Jeff.
neat.
That was really
Thanks.
cool.
Okay. Thanks, y'all.
Yeah. Yeah, it was Jeff Stumpo with a self-portrait, The Beloved. Yeah, a lot of energy in that one. Let's go next to, I don't think it's a first-time caller, Phyllis C. I think maybe Phyllis has been on before.
Yes.
Maybe not, though. Yeah.
My second time.
Great. Well, great to see you
Hi.
again. Thanks so much for coming back. And where are you calling from, Phyllis?
From Winnipeg in the middle of Canada.
Great. Well, so glad you could be here. What do you have for us? What self-portrait?
I actually wrote two, but I'm giving you one. Self-portrait as a parrot. I was the third bird on the right, solitary eye cocked for the new appearance of seed in a plastic cup above the news from last week's Walmart flyer. Magenta lemon, a fluorescent juiceless lime, feathers plucked and dropped, my breast bared and shivering.
Oh, that's great. I love how concise and tight that is.
Me
Yeah.
too. Wow.
Self-portrait as a parrot. Thanks so much for sharing that, Phyllis.
Thank you.
Yeah. There's Phyllis Charette with a self-portrait as a parrot.
So vivid.
Yeah, it really
Just
was
to
in
see
so
it.
few
Yeah,
words. Yeah. Next, let's go to Sean Evaningo Sanders.
Hello, friends.
Hi, Sean.
Hey, Sean. Great to see you.
Okay, well, I'm just going to dive right in. My bird appears later in the poem.
Okay.
Self-portrait as DNA sample. All it takes, according to your website, is one swab to unveil my secret identity, where I come from, who I am. Handed down like embroidered quilts or porcelain teacups from a long ago journey, this code is imprinted over generations to reveal my Russian lineage and confirm I am certifiably not a British bluebird. How can these swab collectors know who I am in this moment as my littered cells reduce to dust in the rug and keep recycling myself into someone new? Does my mouth spittle tell of the tears I stifled with a stiff upper lip when the nurse strapped my boy to the bed for his own safety? Or how with each teardrop I drowned in guilt for imprinting him with this melancholy? Can a singular follicle graying from the ache of worry reveal each shade of blonde I dyed my hair, stripping the color from my plumage to become that rare white peacock my ex would have found beautiful? I am certain the specimen I place into a plastic tube won't show my love for poetry, or pinpoint why I cry each time Judy Garland sings to the sky, and that it has nothing to do with the Tin Man. How crazy to think that for just $79.99, you actually thought you knew me. Or worse, I almost believed that this was the way to figure out who I am.
Yeah, great feeling of intimacy in that one. I really enjoyed that. Self-portrait as DNA sample. Thanks, Sean.
Yeah, and that's what we're really buying when we buy that. I bought that like 7 years ago.
Yeah, really cool. Well, thanks so much for sharing
Thanks.
Sure.
Yeah, it was Sean Evaningo Sanders with a self-portrait as a DNA sample.
Oh, if it had a poetry gene test, we would all be rushing out. That would convince you.
I wonder. it's one of those things. There probably is a poetry gene, but it's not. Nobody makes enough money to study it. Okay, let's go to Laura Berg next.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, Laura, great to see you. Yeah, and I saw your note on the side just pop up about there's a slam in Houston right about now. How do you know that?
Wow, that's impressive.
Right
Laura.
about now is this really active group. I mean, a nice thing for you to just meet them. They're phenomenal.
Well, that's really
Great.
neat. Yeah,
Thank
I did
you.
not know. So thanks for sharing that. So what do you have for your self-portrait?
Oh, okay. I just wanted to say that the interview last week was transcendent. I couldn't be there because it was Mother's Day, but I listened afterwards. It was unbelievably beautiful.
Aw, well, thanks. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. And he's one of my favorite poets, Leon Lee.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, so here's my birdie.
Okay.
Self-portrait with Birdie. Grandpa Grisha's shuttlecock. 16 goose feathers laced into a gut string corset and poked into a cork, in turn stitched inside cream leather. I hold it high in my left hand by one yellowed feather. It feels heavy. With my right, I'm waving his willow wood racket. Posed I am in a gingham sundress, front teeth missing. And much more is missing. But the shuttlecock could be sufficient, an object of quality setting him apart, at least for me who cannot recall him. Only birdie and racket, and once racket goes missing, picture and once picture goes missing, granddaughter and once granddaughter goes missing. The gut string snaps, feathers fly from the birdie, the cork slackens and the leather lays down in the grass, a tiny patch to hold the earth together.
Oh, that was beautiful. I love where you went. That's surprising, taking it to a shuttlecock, and the great descriptions of that. Really fun poem.
creative
Yeah.
and beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Laura. Yeah. It was Laura Berg with a self-portrait with Birdie. Great poems tonight. I'm really enjoying these especially. Next, let's go to Nancy Sabanek.
Hey there. Hi.
Hey, Nancy. Great to see you.
So I took your write a poem today to heart, Katie, and this I wrote at 6:30 p.m.
Oh, perfect.
It is what it is.
Oh, good.
Self-portrait is Turkey Vulture, elementary school. Before I could soar, the other birds jeered at my hunched and palsied run, a body too big for my progeria head. Unfeathered, bald from day one, nifty to enter a carcass, stay clean as I tear flesh with a beak like a hook. Old man, the taunt as they misgender my sex. Memory fade of a warm downy breast, my eyesight sharpens, best to dissect patterns of the dead. My sense of smell unparalleled, I can follow a scent trail for a mile. Before I could soar, I would hide my head beneath a wing, cartoon feathers spread like a polydactylic hand, slumped on the roost we used to rest. My freewheeling ways make me content to commune while other birds sleep in fine feathered nests. Gypsy, they'd chirp. Hippie, they'd caw. That's just the way kids are, the teacher said, but I don't care anymore. Now when they see me soar overhead, eagle, hawk, vulture, they sigh with relief, glad to see me, at least until dead.
Yeah, great poem to be,
Really
especially written
interesting.
that recently, and great
Yeah,
images
it's really
and
impressive.
details.
You can tell it just came out quickly, not just because you told us you wrote it at 6:30. That's great.
That's great. Thanks so much for sharing that,
thank
Nancy.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was Nancy Sabanek with self-portrait as a turkey vulture.
You know what's
elementary
fun about
school.
this too is like the next time we see a vulture, we're gonna get to think about this moment too. It'll
It's
take
true,
us back,
and there are a lot of vultures around here.
There
That's
are a
one
lot
of
of
the-
vultures, which is good because we need the vultures.
Yeah, we do.
A lot of squirrels.
A lot of squirrels.
Yeah.
All right, let's go next to let's go to Kimberly Gibson Tran.
Hello there.
Hi.
Hey, Kimberly, great to see you.
Good to see you. All right, I'll jump into my poem. It's called Self-Portrait as One of Those Twice Divorced Birds.
It's a great title. Yeah.
You know the kinds I'm squawking about. Gobbles, beaks wide-nostrilled, crow's feet and sags about the sockets. Then, on top of it, an explosion of plumes, like the helmets of dyed wigs, thick, chokeable collars, a look that says, you better believe I'm taking collagen. And yes, it takes money to look this good. Swaddled to the gills in the plush skin of an animal you had killed. I always dress to kill, or at least appear like a great horned something or other. I'm not some drab brown robin of a Cinderella warbling on about wishes and dreams. I'm a chic Cruella, a force of action, inducer of screams, ready to slice hides. You could die waiting for some fairy winged godmother, deus ex machina. Better to get your brows feathered. Start tucking while there may be time to save your neck. Please, while you can, give some thought to your neck. Do you assume simple genetics will see you through the second divorce? Ask birthing bed Jane Seymour or chop-blocked Anne Boleyn. Remember to be the queen, not somebody's chicken.
And some great pictures of birds here, too. Those are...
Yeah, I couldn't find the names. Actually, I searched a lot, and it's just a meme, and that's why I thought of these birds. The one on the right, it turns out, I think is just a pigeon. Like there are a bunch of like really fancy feathered pigeons.
Oh wow, that's
on
interesting.
their way to the ball. Like the one on the left literally has the hairstyle of the stepmother in the original Cinderella. Like literally, it's the same hair. It's great.
Yeah, really fun. Yeah, great poem. I love the title especially too. Thanks for sharing that, Kimberly.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's Kimberly Gibson Tran, self-portrait as one of those twice divorced birds. Yeah. Next, let's go to Mike Bales.
Yeah, this is entertaining. I love birds.
Yeah, me too.
I changed
Mike.
I changed my paintings around. The bottom one, that's the first one I did, and one of the roommate, he said it was his favorite.
Oh,
So,
nice.
I sent it to you Friday. My apologies. It's like my third version of it. Yeah, I sent the version of this Friday, the self-portrait of a butterfly. Now that's not bird. I thought of it. I like the butterfly. It has to do with stuff I heard in Iowa Public Radio. Maybe when I was driving through central Iowa with all the cornfields and the wind turbines, and about scarce land for the butterfly. So, but it has to do that. So the file from Friday, self-portrait of a butterfly. I may not be a bird, but I live for the open sky as my paper wings of orange cast rainbows. I started life as a larva and was wrapped in silk in a forest, but I was transformed. No one knew I could be so beautiful. I take to the winds and follow a path never seen. The journey I take is my inspiration. I live for the journey. I have faith when many fall. I sustain myself on milkweed left in patches. To some they look like weeds, but it's their beauty I seek. As frenzied drivers pass, I bear the weight of their intent. They've forgotten their humanity started in a garden.
Great last line. I really like that. And for those just listening, shaped like a butterfly too, Mike. So really interesting poem there.
Yeah, someone QC Post is saying that she's tired of just laying her lines there, and it usually doesn't work for me, but I thought, well, if I can play with these lines, I'll do it.
Yeah, well, good job. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, it was Mike Bales with a self-portrait as a butterfly. Let's see. Mark Grinier is up next. Hey, Mark.
Hi, everybody.
Hi. Good to see you again. It's been a while. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't been doing the prompts as regularly as usual, but this one struck me. So,
oh, great.
It's pretty long. So, self-portrait in a darkened room. The walls were portraits of ancestors all around. The recently gone hanging for remembrance' sake stare down on me perched in my easy chair. They must be wondering where all the flowers have gone. Summer heat looms where ice was once, where the news grows old, repeats again like the green that grows from every crack and crevice. It spreads as Trump's wings spread, creeping into every niche in our national space, our nation's grace. What's carried us through from the colonists' trauma to the revolution, from the Civil War through 2 world wars and a Cold War we now think we've won. Despite the cost and the lack of songs lost in the twittering noise that oligarchs bring on the of the wish to rule from above, to own everything. They crush initiative, crush our love, create division, destroying our faith in a state that holds cold darkness at bay, opens our eyes to an oncoming light, to freedom that chases darkness away. Their crows descending on a corpse below, on children dying from beaten diseases, from starvation creeping from don't care memes, memes. When sleep evades my weary room as old age weakens my bones, I cannot believe the dreams I've had, the hopes I believed were possible dreams, that now are lost in the weary blues I cannot drive away. We live, I live, and distrust the rules, distrust the other, the black, the brown, the gay, and the strange, who come from places I don't understand, who may be friends, my children or neighbors, the ones who hold beliefs I abhor, or live in spaces I can't comprehend, or seeing myself living within. I wish this darkness, however like home it feels to me, however it seems a place of peace and warmth, where I can stare at the past on walls, remember the lives that opened my eyes to all that is godly, good, and worthwhile, remembering their lives lived long and proud, lives worth preserving and changing as needed to meet the challenges facing us all, the threats from outside and inside each that darken this room, disturb my rest, and make me an image of old age flying at death's near door, unable to promise a home to my children, my children's children, or yours.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, Mark. That's great. And, the monologue and the voice that you enter there is really wonderful. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was Mark Grenier with Self-Portrait in a Darkened Room. And Katie just jumped out really quick to, she's still listening, but she jumped out to take the aluminum foil off the top of the lasagna. So she'll be right back in just a second. It was about that time. Let's go next to Tina Dennettclaw.
Thank you. I'm so late. I should be the very last. It's only fair.
No, it's
Golly.
great to see you. Yeah.
Oh, good to see you guys. Yeah, thank you. I enjoyed this group so much for many reasons. I also struggled with the prompt. Nancy Tinnell published or put on the Facebook very early, just really wonderful things, and that helped me kind of get going. But I struggled. So this is what I have. It's a self-portrait of a bird of paradise.
Yeah, great. Let's hear it.
I am a randy dandy, quite taken with myself. If I'd a cane to match my cape, I'd strut along the avenue and wink at all the gals. Just the thought of me, you see, would make the ladies swoon, and that's before they catch a glimpse of my fabulous blue chest plumes. Spread out in front against my black, a luminescent sea, lingering on the horizon, the iridescent me. I'm said to live in paradise, but truth be told, it's hard. I preen and clean and hop about, but there are 20 buggers for every hen, and she can't tell the lads apart. I am a randy dandy, just like all the other blokes. As pretty as I am, she holds all the cards.
Yeah, and then we have some photos of this. It's an amazing bird that I've seen the videos. As somebody mentioned, there's a
Planet Earth. Is this on Planet Earth? I've seen this bird.
Yeah, there's a great documentary about them, how much they dance and just they try so hard.
Yeah.
They're so desperate to win the affection of their partner. It's
So
really
little
funny.
chance. Yeah, I'm guessing. that like some really successful bird at some time fathered all the next generation. And so they all look the same. And the girls just can't figure out who to choose.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. Thanks so much for sharing that. Really
You're
fun
welcome.
poem, Tina.
Thank you.
It was Tina Deniclaw with a self-portrait, Greater Lorfina Bird of Paradise. Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's going to wrap up the open lines. Let's see. We get everybody. Yeah. So that's the
Prompt line.
Zoom anyway.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. 2 errors in that statement.
Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to point
No,
that
it's okay.
out.
The prompt lines, and I'm going to see if we have. Ted Guevara was here today. Let's read his poem. He's got. Oh, I expected a picture of birds, given the topic.
Ted
but
always
no.
surprises us.
He always surprises
He
us. He's
couldn't
got
enclose a
2
bird.
goats sitting on one branch on the side of a cliff.
It looks precarious, you know?
It looks very precarious. I'm a little worried about
Yeah.
those goats,
Mhm.
but let's see what Ted's got for us as far as a poem. Ram birds. You know? So he went pretty far with the concept of bird. That's pretty fun. Ram birds. They have you believing that wingless rams can attain immaculate balance because they think they're more poised than birds. Let truth be told. Fleece is the one that holds beauty, not just for a moment. Let's stay in that moment. I wear my hoodie to unravel things. That in the cloaking of my head, humanity is still for all. Like 40 years back when I first observed such rams. Weather, shadow, opinions in sync with mine, partake in the warmth. Fleece is durable, for it has preserved my good thought. I didn't need to revive a stand. Israel's fate was strong, like the wayward branch. No need to worry about its weight distribution in academia. History and belief were safe. Rams honed equilibrium like they were birds. Now, in the present, I have to wear dark again, like a newcomer in an imbecilic season. Instead of snow, height befalls an accumulating danger. Cling to me, old axiom. Stay in the garment with your normalcy. Balance is there still. When I first wore you, all seemed warm, understood. Now rams shiver, teetering on the weak outgrowth. Really fascinating poem, Ram Birds by Ted Guevara. Thanks for sharing that as always, Ted. And that is going to wrap up the prompt lines now. Let's go to the coup.
Yeah. The haiku, because
haiku.
when haiku is too long, shorten it to coup.
Exactly.
It's that much cooler.
And so the haiku for this week, this was, we went on a date on Friday night.
We
remember?
did. It was very
to,
sweet.
we went
Thank you
to
for
an old
inviting
saloon.
me. Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And ate some barbecue Texas style.
Mm-hmm.
And across the way, I noticed on the Google map, though, that there was this mural wall. And it turned out just to be this rundown house. And so I said, what weird thing did I see this week? That was what I could make into a haiku at the last minute today. So this is my haiku for that little memory. Here we go. Abandoned house, the old graffiti of a sunset. There you go. That's
Like
abandoned house, the old graffiti of a
Palimpsest.
sunset. Yeah, there you
Yeah,
go.
nice.
That is the coup for this week and the show for this week. So thanks everybody for joining us. It's been a lot of fun. Now next. Oh wait, no, we do the. Do we do the next week's guest? No, we do the
prompt.
the
for
prompt
next
next. Yeah, well, discombobulated a little bit
It's
today.
okay. You're doing great.
So next
Okay.
week's prompt is to. Here you go, Katie. What is it?
We're going to write a poem set in a garden you've only been to once before and include a metaphor.
Well, maybe
It also rhymes.
Could your poem be? Oh yeah, that does rhyme. Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Interesting.
I went with that actually because it was like a couple different options for the second component to the prompt. But
Well, there we go. Well, your poem could be a Neil Postman Award for metaphor winner because
I
we
was
do know
hoping
there are
to.
not as many metaphors.
It is.
as
It's
we
really,
think.
really hard to, it's a lot harder to write an original metaphor. And there are a lot of good poems that have no original metaphors. So
Yeah.
hopefully we can look at that more.
Very
we have an
true.
episode of metaphor, or a few, I guess, on the poetry space too, in case you're looking for a little bit of inspiration, hopefully,
Yeah.
where we talk about the Neil Postman Award for metaphor
Mhm.
winners specifically because they had some good metaphors, believe it
Yeah.
or not.
That's
People in
usually,
contention.
that's usually how it
Abby
works.
Murray's Supermoon and
Mhm.
yep. Mhm.
Yeah, and speaking of the poetry space, so the last episode released this week was with spirituality in
Mhm.
poetry with Chris Anderson, who's been on the
Mhm.
Rattlecast twice. If you want to check that out, talking more about spiritual nature of poetry. Yeah,
For the 100th episode, which has to be lucky and has to be more important than episode 99, you know?
definitely is. So there you go. So check that out too, anywhere you get your podcast. It's the Poetry Space, Katie Dozier's show. And now next week's guest in the Rattlecast is going to be Hannah Ahmad Jabir, Jennifer Jean, and Wadak Kais. This is a special book that came out. It's a dialogue between Jennifer and Hannah. It's called Where Do You Live? And it's a dialogue between those two poets in poetry in their own languages, Arabic and English. And Wadak Kais is a translator because Hannah lives in Iraq, in Mosul. It's very late at night at the regular time, so we're going to do it early at noon Eastern time. So it's one of those shows, if you're watching this after the fact because it's too late for you wherever you are, join for sure on the prompt lines. Write your poem set in a garden with a metaphor, and you can share it because it's going to be earlier. You don't have to stay up too late to participate. And that's going to be Rattlecast number 294, a special time, 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Pacific, next Sunday. Hope to see you there. Hope you have a great week. In the meantime, we'll talk to you later. Good night.
Good night.